your highlight reels rolling. Number 23's in the house.
Oh, a spectacular move by Michael Jordan.
Oh, God, an unbelievable move. He put it in and it counts.
Me, I feel like I'm the most fierce competitor there is. I don't think I'm ever going to find something equal to the game of basketball for me.
Have you ever gone on a court and been afraid?
No, I've never been afraid. I mean, obviously you're nervous, but afraid means you're not confident in your skills. I have total confidence in my skills, so I'm not afraid.
When I talk about somebody like Michael Jordan, you probably think about his on-court prowess and his absolute domination of basketball. Even today, when people talk about Michael Jordan, they think about the best, the winner, the class achiever. But did you know that Michael Jordan also was an incredible investor? I mean, his investment career is almost as good as his on-court endeavors. So I'll give you some highlights. He signed, a groundbreaking endorsement deal with Nike, or Nike in this country, in 1984, creating the iconic Air Jordan sneaker line. I mean, even now, my kids are like, I want a Jordan, and it costs like £300. Now listen to this, Air Jordan sales exceeded $100 million in the first year alone. By the way, this was back in the 1980s. 100 million, do you know how much that would be worth now? This is almost 40 years ago. They were never expecting it to be this much. He became the first former NBA player to be the majority owner of an NBA team. They used to be called the Charlotte Bobcats. They're now called the Hornets. You probably know them as the Hornets. And it was back in 2010 that he did that. He was the first to do that. He sold the majority stake in what's now called the Hornets in 2023, so over 13 years later, for $3 billion. Do you know how much he paid? He paid $170 million, which is a lot, but he sold them for $3 billion. That was the second highest sale price for an NBA team at the time. Now remember that, because that's going to be very important later on in the video. That's nearly 17 times the original purchase price in 13 years. I mean, that's pretty good. Now Air Jordan, the Air Jordan brand, you've heard of Jordans, right? Air Jordan brand generates over $6.6 billion in annual revenue for Nike. And in 2020 alone, Michael Jordan earned $130 million, or estimated, let's say about $100 million. But estimated $130 million in royalties. Now just think about that. $130 million a year, that's pretty good, right? But think about the value that he generates, because it actually generates $6.6 billion in annual sales. This is quality, this is class. It's a cultural phenomenon. And also he has very diverse investment portfolios. It includes restaurants, car dealerships, equity stakes in DraftKings, Sportradar, and premium tequila brands, for example. It didn't take long before he became a billionaire, as you can imagine. He became a billionaire in 2014. He was the first, when you think of Michael Jordan, it was first, right? He was the first former professional athlete on the Forbes 400 list. Just think about that. So what are his core investment philosophies and principles? What can we learn? So for example, he has a legendary competitive drive and desire to win. How do we know that?
Winning has a price. And leadership has a price. So I pulled people along when they didn't want to be pulled. I challenge people when they don't want to be challenged. Once you join the team, you live at a certain standard that I played the game. And I wasn't going to take any less. Now, that means I had to go in there and get in your ass a little bit, and I did that. You asked all my teammates, the one thing about Michael Jordan was he never asked me to do something that he didn't fucking do. I wanted to win, but I wanted them to win and be a part of that as well. Like, I don't have to do this. I'm only doing it because it is who I am. That's how I played the game. That was my mentality.
His success is on court for sure, but what is so good is that he managed, and not everybody can do this, managed to transmute them over to his investment career. He recognized the power of personal brand very, very early on. I would say he was one of the first to do that in sporting. So for example, this kind of the human brand. I mean, imagine nowadays in NFTs, If you could NFT Michael Jordan, you can have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, or some of his feet or his hands or something like that. I mean, he would be the most successful NFT ever. He understood the importance of ownership and equity stakes over just endorsements, because most people, what they were actually doing, most sports people were just endorsing things. They were on television endorsing some brand or other. But no, he didn't want that. Michael Jordan wanted ownership. He wanted equity stakes. So therefore, when things go up, he would cash in big time. So he wasn't just interested in cash flow. He was interested in equity stakes. Very important. He also surrounded himself with experienced mentors. Before buying the Bobcats, now the Hornets, he actually was working for another team to help them. So he learned what to do, what not to do, etc. The mistakes, what not to make before he went. That's very clever. Most people say, I'm going to open a restaurant. They've never actually worked in a restaurant. Diversified investment portfolio beyond many, many different industries. That's another thing. And also he was very patient, long-term approach, allowing the assets to appreciate. It was 13 years. I mean, I don't know whether that's a long time, but nowadays it seems a long time, right? But he made 17 times his money. So he allows them to appreciate. And his willingness to take calculated risks, because the $170 million that he paid for the NBA team wasn't all his. He actually did it through debt. So he took on debt in order to buy it. So he didn't put his own money in. But that's what we do with properties, right? We don't put all of our money in. We put in 20%. The rest is by the banks. So what's his methodology for investments? Okay. Brand alignment and synergies is the first thing, because he didn't go off and start, vodka brands or, tequila brands or anything like that, or restaurants. He started with NBA. Well, the first thing was the sneakers, right? The Air Jordans. Makes sense. Brand alignment and synergies, right? Then he went on to work with NBA. Again, brand alignment and synergies before he went on to other things. And remember, asset ownership potential. So it wasn't just cash flow. It wasn't just endorsements like all the other players. No. He wanted ownership. That's what he wanted, so that when you sell, you make a lot of money. The next, patient, long-term approach. He was never in it for the short term. Very, very clever, right? Which means that it takes time for assets to appreciate, because you never know what the market is going to do. And he wanted revenue upside, hence his asset ownership potential. Also, learning opportunities. He was extremely open to learning about new opportunities, and that's why he then started diversifying across asset classes and industries. I mean, he does so many different things. I mean, he must do about 17 different things by now. He's got also balanced risk tolerance. Some things that he absolutely knows a lot about. Some things maybe he doesn't know that much about, but he knows that that is the trend. So his successful early investments. Let's have a look at these. Air Jordan brand with Nike in 1984 generated over $100 million in sales, like we said, in the first year. And that far exceeded Nike's expectations. And honestly, probably his expectations as well, right? Then he started off with a minority ownership in Washington Wizards, which was between 1999 and 2003. So he did that first, learned the trade, learned what to do, what not to do in terms of ownership of an NBA team, and only then did he purchase the majority of Charlotte Bobcats, now called the Hornets, in 2010. Can you see that? So learning it first, learning the mistakes, what to do, what not to do, then the big play. And how did he do it? Well, he acquired the team for $175 million, as I said, but using debt finance, right? Other people's money. OPM. So good, right? And then he sold the majority stake, like I said, but he sold it in 2023 for over $3 billion. And by the way, this was at the height of when, valuations were really, really high. So he also knows when to exit as well. He's very astute. All right, let's talk about his criteria for taking profits and selling, because it's not only about buying, which is important, of course, but I would almost argue that the buying is easier than the selling, right? When do you take profits? When do you actually sell? I mean, my background in stocks and shares. It's easy to get in, but when do you get out, right? Do you get out in a big move up, or, when it goes down? When do you do it? Or do you buy some more? Okay, obviously, as you can tell, very patient, long-term mindset. And honestly, tell me one thing that doesn't work long-term. It's normally the long-term that wins, but most people don't have a long-term point of view. They normally have the opposite. They have a short-term point of view, unfortunately. He prioritizes asset appreciation over income. Most people want what? income, right? And then they spend it. He prioritizes asset appreciation. He considers brand alignment. What suits the brand, especially in the early days, what suits that brand? But what brand are we talking about? Are we talking about basketball? Yes, to start off with. But I think his brand is bigger than that. It's achievement. It's winning. Yes? Everybody wants to be around a winner. And he rotates profits, this is so cool, into new investments for diversification. So he doesn't just sell an NBA team and put it into another NBA team. That would be crazy because it's at the height of peak valuation. So the others are going to be peak valuation as well, right? So what you do is you want to rotate into something which is at a low and then take advantage of that. So it's really like investing in stocks, I think. Anyway, so what are the key investing lessons from Michael Jordan? Diversification and strategic partnerships. He used his brand not only to buy the NBA, but then he used his brand to get other brands to come on board. So for example, one brand paid $25 million just to have the naming rights of the stadium. Amazing, why not? That's a nice $25 million.
And while the NBA made Jordan famous, his sponsors made him rich. He earned $1.7 billion in endorsements off the court and still reps top brands in retirement. Nike was by far his biggest money earner. Jordan's initial 5-year deal, signed in 1984, was worth $500,000 annually plus royalties. Nike built the Jordan brand into a massive standalone business. Nike's share of the U.S. basketball performance shoe market, which includes the Jordan brand, was 86% in 2019. Jordan's take from that last year? $130 million.
Next, identifying and capitalizing on cultural trends. What were the trends at the time that made him think that the sneaker trend, right, Jordans, was going to be so big? Everybody wants to have comfortable, really cool looking shoes, right? It's a huge trend, which, by the way, is just accelerating now 40 years later. By the way, he's still earning now 40 years later, hundreds of millions a year. I mean, that is a trend that he really saw early on. Next, relentless pursuit of excellence. On court, right? This winning streak, doing anything to win, boom, he does this with investing and business as well. Relentless pursuit of excellence. The best of the best of the best. Just going back to the sneakers, they aren't low quality and falling apart. They are really good quality. Everybody wants them. And when you have that with a personal brand together, boom, Magic Johnson appears. Next, long-term vision and brand equity. Because the more success you have, I always say, I got this from my mentor, T. Harv Eker, success breeds more what? Success, right? So he has success here, then he has success with the Jordans, then he has success with the NBA. Now everybody wants to be part of it. And because everybody wants to be part of it, everybody wants to be part of it. So he has that real brand equity. And it's almost like, a black hole kind of like sucking things in. And, everybody equity and long-term vision. Next, resilience and adaptability. Man, he is not into just, doing something once and then retiring. He wants to keep going, and not only keep going, but growing. Notice, his empire is growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, I'm sure. Next, and finally, strategic investments and ownership. Remember that, right? It's great having cash flow. Everybody wants cash flow. But if there's any way that you can have ownership of something, that's where the real money is. I have to say, it has been an absolute honor to be able to research this. Well, I didn't know much about his investments, I have to say. I always knew that he was really good at basketball. And wasn't he also the one, this just shows his mindset. Didn't he then also go into baseball? And although he wasn't as good as he was there, he was still pretty good apparently, right? So the question is, what can you learn from Michael Jordan on court and off court? What can you learn about diversifying and strategic partnerships? What can you learn about identifying and capitalizing on cultural trends? Relentless pursuit of excellence. What about long-term vision and brand equity and resilience and adaptability and strategic investments and ownership? What can you learn from that and put it into action? Comment below.